As Albert Einstein once said, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results.
You are Locked On Pirates, your daily Pittsburgh Pirates podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome back to the Locked On Pirates podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates, every single day. My name is Ethan Smith, your host of this wonderful show here on the Locked On Podcast Network. You can follow me on Twitter at MVP_Ethan or at Locked On Pirates for all of your news, analysis, opinions, and reactions to everything going on in the world of the Pittsburgh Pirates. And if any of you stayed up late last night again, you would see that the Pittsburgh Pirates dropped another game in miserable fashion to the Oakland Athletics, losing 5-2 last night and losing yet another series, of course, to the Oakland A's. And folks, things are getting ridiculous at this point. I don't know what other word to really describe it. And as you heard my intro, I called this team and am calling this team the definition of insanity right now. It is absolutely ridiculous what is going on with this Pittsburgh Pirates team. It is something that honestly could have been easily preventable going into this season. And I will just say the definition again for all of you. Again, this is a quote that Albert Einstein became famous for. You can get it on a mug, you can get it on a t-shirt, you can get it on anything. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. That is exactly what this team is doing right now. I mean, there's no other quote, there's no other thing that could be said about what this Pittsburgh Pirates team is doing that would more fabricate it. I mean, seriously. And it's just getting kind of crazy right now that for the Pittsburgh Pirates, the month of April is gone. We're going to look forward to May later in the show. The month of April is gone. And it felt like it was already two different seasons, and the Pirates are only a month into the season. They had the great start against the Miami Marlins, who had a decimated pitching staff, all of those lefties. The offense was not that good, and quite frankly, we found out pretty quickly that the Miami Marlins were not that good. Their fortunes turned over to the Washington Nationals, another team that in all rights and for all intents and purposes, the Pirates should have beat. And they did. Then came the Baltimore Orioles, where I got to meet a lot of you on opening day. And following that, they won 2 games after losing the series opener, beating a team that I picked to win the World Series this year. Then they beat the Tigers on Monday. And it all seemed to start spiraling once they lost that game to the Detroit Tigers. We all remember which game it was because it was the game that Bednar was getting booed. Rowdy Tellez came out and said, "We don't do that in Pittsburgh," and that whole fiasco. And since that series against the Detroit Tigers, the Pittsburgh Pirates have not won a series, and 2, they have just flat out looked horrible. There's no other way to put it. And you guys know that I try to be a positive mind. I try to go into these shows with a positive mindset. I try to bring out the positivity in this team. I try to look at the things that they're doing right. But folks, it's hard to find right now. And the only issue is even what they are doing right from the pitching staff. Mitch Keller didn't have a terrible night last night. Jared Jones has looked great. Perez has looked good. Falters, even to a degree, looked very, very solid. But here's the problem, is their flaw, the offense, is a fatal flaw. It is not like one of those flaws that your ex-girlfriend said, "Oh, yeah, that's why I don't want to date you anymore." It's a flaw that is killing the expectations of this team. And you look since that Detroit series, and we're going to go game by game and look at this. So strap in. We're going to go game by game on this one. 5-1 loss to the Phillies. 5-2 win versus the Phillies. 4-3 loss to the Phillies. 9-2 win against Philadelphia. 6-3 loss to the Mets. 3-1 loss to the Mets. 9-1 loss to the Mets. 8-1 loss to the Red Sox. 4-2 loss to the Red Sox. 6-1 loss to the Red Sox. Then they get back in the win column. They beat Milwaukee 4-2 and 2-1, lose 3-2 and 7-5. Folks, after that Detroit series, the Pirates scored 5 or more runs 3 times. That was on April 12th against the Phillies, 5-2, April 14th against the Phillies, 9-2, and April 25th against the Milwaukee Brewers in a 7-5 loss. They only scored 5 or more runs 3 times following that April 9th loss to the Detroit Tigers. That is nuts. And now I'm not sitting here and saying that going into every single game, you have to score 5 or 6 or 7 runs. You don't. Even the best offenses in baseball, the Atlanta Braves, the Los Angeles Dodgers, don't score that many runs a game. But they do find ways to at least make it happen every other day, or make it happen for a few days and then go back to normalcy. But since April 15th, folks, the Pirates have just been horrible offensively. They've scored 1 run. Let me count. 1, 2, 3, 4, or 1 run or less. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times since April 15th. Folks, that is a little over 2 weeks ago, and they've only scored 1 run or less that many times. Since the Philadelphia Phillies game, 9-2, great offensive day for them. That was the day Kutch hit 300. Great offensive day for them. They've only scored 4 runs or more twice. Or 3 times. Sorry. 3 times since April 15th. That was in a 4-2 win against the Brewers, a 4-3 win against the Giants, and a 5-7 or 7-5 loss to the Brewers. They're averaging 2.6 runs per game since April 15th. That is just not going to cut it. Because the reason that I want to highlight that number specifically, the runs per game number being that low, the definition of a quality start, folks, the breaking point of a quality start from your starting pitcher is a minimum of 6 innings pitched and a maximum of 3 runs allowed. Well, on average, since April 15th, the Pirates starting pitchers could give them a quality start with a minimum of 6 innings pitched and a maximum of 3 earned runs and lose. And they've seen that. I mean, you look at some of these games that they've lost. 3-2 to the Giants, 3-0 to the Giants, 3-2 to the Milwaukee Brewers, 4-2 to the Boston Red Sox, 3-1 to the Mets. All winnable games. And a lot of you right now are making a good point on social media as well to mention that Oakland, this was a series they should win. I know the A's are playing better baseball than what they've been expected to play, but this is a series they should have won. And they've already lost it and have a chance to get swept. Then you bring in Colorado and the Angels, who are 2 teams that are absolutely teams that the Pirates should beat right now in 2024. But are you really that confident in what we've seen from this offense that they can even beat the Rockies and the Angels? I mean, seriously, that's to the point that I've gotten now. Can they even beat the lowly Colorado Rockies and a Mike Troutless Los Angeles Angels team at home. That's where I've gotten to at this point with this offense. So how and when does it end? I don't know. And nobody does. Because right now they are just doing the exact same things that they've done for the past 2 weeks, and nothing has changed. Nothing. Derek Shelton has tried pretty much every lineup combination that he can physically try, and that's about it. And the sad part is last night, even, the goal of what this team has was achieved. Mitch Spence ended up getting the win, but Alex Wood was the starter. He only went 4 innings last night. Walked 4, K'd 4, gave up 2 earned runs. That's what Andy Haynes and the coaching staff are teaching them to do. Chase the starters away. Here's the only issue. The A's bullpen is one of the best bullpens in baseball right now. So you chased away the starter. Congratulations. You tagged him for 2 earned runs. Congratulations. He only recorded 12 outs. Congratulations. But then Spence comes in with a 2.84 ERA, 2 strikeouts over 3 scoreless. Ursig comes in with a 1.42 ERA, 1 inning pitch, strikes out the side. Mason Miller, arguably the best closer in baseball right now, 3 strikeouts in an inning pitched in the save. So since you chased the starter, Alex Wood, you didn't get on base via the free pass once, and you struck out 8 times. Is that the philosophy that you want? Because if this is what the Pirates want to do, their expectations that I had for them winning 84 games, their expectations that a lot of people had for them finally taking a little bit of a next step, can go right out the window. Because playing like this, they're not going to beat anybody. And I know it is very early in the year. They are not going to be this team all year. But the biggest caveat to them being a team that can compete is winning games against teams that they should be beating. They should be beating the Oakland Athletics, a team, again, that I know is playing good baseball. They should beat the Colorado Rockies at least in the series, let alone sweep them. The LA Angels, they should beat the LA Angels and arguably sweep the LA Angels. But again, as I mentioned earlier, I cannot even confidently say that they can do that. I cannot sit here on the Locked On Pirates podcast and tell you at this current moment with how this offense is constructed and what they are doing that they can even beat a Colorado Rockies team that's probably going to lose 100 games and an Angels team that has the potential of losing 100 games now that Mike Trout is hurt. I cannot confidently tell you that, folks. And that's sad because this is a team that has talent. You have Hayes, you have Cruz, you have Reynolds, you even have some of the other younger guys like Triolo, Sowinski, Davis, Joey Bart to a degree. You have real talent on this roster. Use it. And I mean, I will go out and say this too to end segment 1. I know a lot of you want them to fire Andy Haynes, and I'll compare it to Matt Canada. We wanted Matt Canada gone. He was eventually gone in the middle of the year. I would say the same thing will probably happen for the Pittsburgh Pirates with Andy Haynes. It'll just be later in the year when they have a broader sample size. I don't know what more they need to see, but it'll be later in the year when they have a broader and more advanced sample size. But that philosophy is going to stick around for at least a couple months. And that's scary because it's a philosophy that really might kill the expectations that this team has. So right now, they are the definition of insanity. They're going to get good starts from their starters, but their offense is doing absolutely nothing right now to beat anybody. And that's just the facts. And it's a sad fact. It really is. And they are the same team with the same outcomes, just in different days and different games. And it just feels like copy and paste every day. Or some people say copy pasta. That's just how it feels right now. But the calendar is turned from April to May. Maybe that will help this offense get back to what they were doing at the beginning of the year. We're going to take a look at the month of May with a big stretch in the middle of that month that I think could make or break this Pirates team pretty early, much like it did last year. But before we look at that, let's hear from DoorDash and Prize Picks. Today's episode of Locked On Pirates is brought to you by DoorDash. Mother's Day's coming up, folks, and moms are a gift, so give her the best this Mother's Day. Get gifts as thoughtful as she is with DoorDash, because you can select from hundreds of expertly crafted bouquets to the best of tech to self-care essentials and more delivered right to her door. To get those Mother's Day gifts for that special mom in your life, get all your Mother's Day gifts all in one place and get 50% off your next order, up to $15 when you spend $15 or more on your next flour, convenience, grocery, or retail order now with code LOCKEDONMLB. That's Locked On MLB, LOCKEDON MLB, when ordering using DoorDash today. Terms apply, but get her a Mother's Day gift as unique as her. Today's episode of Locked On Pirates is also brought to you by Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100, because Prize Picks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 3 million members. You just pick more or less on 2 or more player stats and watch your winnings roll in. Baseball's in full swing, so don't miss your chance to add your favorite players from the diamond in your Prize Picks entries. Whether it's strikeouts, RBIs, or first inning runs, take your pick of more or less and add them to your Prize Picks entry today. You can also get in on the playoff action in the NHL and basketball's postseason. So download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy with Prize Picks. And folks, welcome back to the Locked On Pirates podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates, every day. Make sure you check out Locked On Sports Today, the 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube and Amazon Fire TV. You might see this episode on Locked On Sports Today. You can see Locked On Steelers, Locked On Penguins, and all of the shows from Locked On and all of the local hosts who do a phenomenal job on this network, bringing you your favorite sports every single day. And a happy May. It is May 1st, 2024, which means we have gotten through a full calendar month of the MLB season. And yeah, that was a fun first month. It was a month that had lots of ups and lots of downs. And the Pirates, of course, will begin the month of May with the final game of the series against the Oakland Athletics today. We'll preview that in the final segment of today's show. But you already heard me mention that we were going to talk about looking at this May schedule and a very, very, very important week and a half that they're going to see. Obviously, wrapping up their series in Oakland today. Then they come back home for 9 straight games to face off against a Colorado Rockies team that, as I mentioned in segment 1, they should beat this team. This is a Rockies team that they should have no issues defeating. They then play the Los Angeles Angels, and it was announced yesterday that Mike Trout will need to have knee surgery, so he will be out for an extended period of time. They don't expect it to be season-ending. This Angels team was already not that great of a team, and now they're losing one of the best players in baseball in Mike Trout, so take that as you will. So they play those games, and then comes something that might bring back some bad memories for Pirates fans, especially from last season. The Pittsburgh Pirates will play the Chicago Cubs at home in a weekend series. They will then play the Milwaukee Brewers and then the Chicago Cubs again in a 4-game series in the middle of this month. That is going to be a stretch, I think, where we learn a lot about what this team will be going into the summer. Now, May, I consider it a summer month just because I've lived in Georgia my whole life. Now I live in PA, so a little bit of a different story. But we remember last year when they had that stretch against the Cubs, the Brewers, and the Cubs, when they lost 9 or 10 in a row, and that pretty much put the nail in the coffin on if they were going to be a competitive team last year or not. Obviously, end the season very strong last year. They win 76 games, looked a lot better than people expected them to. But with the expectations being a little bit different this year, you get into a mode where you say, okay, let's see what this team can do. Let's see if this Pirates team can go into that. Now, obviously, they still have the game against Oakland. They still have 6 games before that. But the Cubs and the Brewers are right now the class of the division. They are 2 teams from last year that fought to the bitter end to win this division, and so far are at the top of the division as we speak. If you want to be competitive in this NL Central, the Pirates need to have a winning record coming out of that, or at least around 500, because it's, I believe, 10 games. Yes, it's 10 games. 7 of those against the Chicago Cubs, 3 of them against the Brewers. They've already split a series against the Brewers, of course, at PNC Park. When you factor in that they then, in June, which we'll do this again on June 1st, or on June 3rd, actually, because June 1st is a Saturday, they play the St. Louis Cardinals and the Reds for the first time in June. So they're getting their first looks at a lot of the teams in the division later in the year, obviously due to the fact that the schedule has changed and you play every single team and you got to get those games out of the way as well. But they're going to learn a lot, and we're going to learn a lot about what this team can be and if they can compete in the NL Central. Now, if they go into that 10-game stretch playing like they're playing now, that's going to get a little dicey. But again, I mean, you play 10 games there. If they can find a way, go 6-4 to 4-6, I would consider it a success. Genuinely. If they found, I mean, 7 of those games are on the road. Those are tough games against the Brewers and the Cubs on the road. They historically struggle at Wrigley Field and in Milwaukee. So they can find a way to go 4-6 in that stretch and win the home series against the Cubs. I think I walk away with that feeling okay, especially if they can be 500 or above, because then you're looking at it and saying, okay, you're still 500 or better in the division. They're 2-2 in the division right now. And I think that's a big component to what kind of team this team is going to be, is if they have a winning record in the division or around a winning record in the division, they're going to probably be in the conversation in August and September. If they don't, which has been something we've come accustomed to in the past couple of years and historically, same story. But following that, you then have the Giants again, who they lost 2 out of 3 to just over the weekend. Then they have the Atlanta Braves, a team that obviously is a World Series contender, a very loaded roster with Ronald Acuna, Ozzie Albies, Marcell Ozuna, Austin Riley, Matt Olson, Sean Murphy, Travis d'Arnaud, Jared Kelenic, Michael Harris. That's a very loaded team. It's a tough series, but again, another home series. They then play Detroit again, 2-game set at Detroit, and they end the month at Toronto. So it's not an easy month at all. You got the Blue Jays sprinkled in there. You got the Tigers, who they split with earlier this year, in there. The Giants, who they lost a series to. The Braves, again, a World Series contender. But that NL Central stretch is really going to define what kind of team they are in the month of May. And it should. And it's a stretch that all of you should really look at and say, yeah, That's going to be a stretch that's going to be very crucial and very important to what kind of team this team is going to be throughout the entire year. And we'll see. We'll see what happens. We'll see if it's a stretch that the Pirates can find a way to do good in. And we'll obviously be covering all those games here on the Locked On Pirates podcast, just as I will be this afternoon as they play the Oakland Athletics in the series finale at 3:37 Eastern Time, 12:37 Pacific, as they'll look to muster a win against the Oakland A's to end their first West Coast road trip. We're going to preview that game here in just a moment, but before we do, folks, let's hear from Monopoly Go. Today's episode of Locked On Pirates is also brought to you by Monopoly Go. Download Monopoly Go free on the App Store and Google Play, because I'm sure all of you loved playing Monopoly as a kid, or even still love to play it now, but you take it with you on the go, because in Monopoly Go, you can team up with your friends for time tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own unique mini games like digging for treasure or a robot pachinko machine. And there's always new timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go, so get off the bench and go download it now, free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on Monopoly Go. And folks, welcome back to the final segment of today's episode of Locked On Pirates here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where the Pittsburgh Pirates will look to salvage a game against the Oakland Athletics this afternoon against those Oakland A's, who right now actually possess the same record as the Pittsburgh Pirates. Both teams entering this one at 14-17, and it will be Quinn Priester, who had a much better outing in his last outing, by the way, dropped his ERA considerably after that first outing that he had against the Boston Red Sox that did not go very well. 3.48 ERA for Priester so far in 10 1/3, 8 strikeouts, a 1.16 whip. We'll see if it's something that he can build on from his last start that he had for the Buccos. Meanwhile, for the Oakland Athletics, it will be Ross Stripling, who has a 4.98 ERA, 34 1/3 innings pitched, 25 strikeouts, whip about 1.5, career 4.01 ERA guy. He's had 6 games this year, and Stripling has not done too bad. What I do understand about him as well from the MLB app, his nickname is Chicken Strip, which I think is actually really, really funny. But in his last start against the Baltimore Orioles, gave up 6 hits in 5 2/3, 2 earned runs. He's allowed 3 earned runs or less in his last 3 starts, those being against the St. Louis Cardinals, the Cleveland Guardians, and the Baltimore Orioles in those games. Had, of course, some not so good starts early in the year, but has since picked it up. And you look at the Pirates against Ross Stripling, and there's a lot of pluses that you see, although not that many at-bats, a lot of pluses. Rowdy Tellez has a 500 average against him in 2 at-bats. Jared Triolo has a 500 average against him in 2 at-bats. You look at O'Neal Cruz, who has homered off of Ross Stripling in only 3 at-bats. Andrew McCutchen has had quite the success against Ross Stripling in his career. 2 home runs, 3 RBIs at 11 at-bats, which equates to a 1.765 OPS for Kutch. Olivares has only faced him once and had success. So we'll see what the Pirates can do in this one. Again, not a lot of it really matters if the offense doesn't show up, but you would hope that it does indeed show up and find a way to at least salvage one here in Oakland.